Make us turn on each other. Maybe, Miles said, his voice low. But maybe one of us really does owe him, more than the rest. Silence settled over the cabin, heavy as the fog outside. We each looked at the mirror again, the glass catching the faintest reflection of all three of us. For a second, I could swear I saw movement like another shape, standing just behind us. Première blinked. It was gone. That night, the three of us sat around the dying fire, the air thick with suspicion and unsaid words. Everspring dres me glad in Miles tapped his rhythm, and I stared into the flames, wondering if we were already too deep in whatever game Dad had set. Because the longer it went on, the more it felt like he wasn't testing us. He was punishing us. On deep. Down. I feared he was right too. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a door, slamming. Miles was gone. His sleeping bag was still sprawled open on the floor, his duffel missing. Evelyn stood by the window, staring out into the fog, her hair a dark tangle against her face. He left before sunrise, she said, her voice flat. Took the car. I rubbed my eyes. Where? She pointed toward the lake. Said the next clue was out there. Didn't say how he knew. Just went. I walked over to the window. The fog was dense enough to swallow the trees whole, and somewhere within it, I thought I saw movement, the faint shape of a figure walking along the dock, vanishing into mist. He's following something, Evelyn said. Or maybe he drowsing at bowl. Pakedwatui. Could, and followed the muddy path down to the shore. The fog clung to our skin, the kind that makes sound feel muffled, unreal. Somewhere, in the distance, would crack maybe a branch, maybe something heavier. Ten premier sawitas malkin Mars's was draped for the seat. Miles, I shouted, the sound echoing uselessly over the still water. No answer, Evelyn sighed. He probably went across to asterisk what asterisk. There's nothing on the other side but forest. She looked at me, her face pale and drawn. You really think he'd let that stop him? The water looked calm, but beneath it, something felt off too still, too heavy. I felt that same wrongness as when I'd first looked into the mirror. Like the lake wasn't reflecting the world. But watching it, we took the rowboat. Each pull of the oars sliced through the mist with a hollow rhythm. The silence was oppressive. Even the birds had gone quiet. When we reached the far shore, the trees loomed like sentinels, their branches slick with dew. There was a trail, faint but deliberate. And in the mud boot prints, he's close, Evelyn said. We followed the prints through the forest until the ground began to slope downward. Ergre. Colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your teeth. Half conwesa with an old shek, half swellines. The door hung crook one hinge. Inside, it was dark, but the faint glint of metal caught my eye. A box, identical to the others. Evelyn knelt, brushing away dust. This one's newer. I crouched beside her, heart thudding. You think he found it? Before she could answer, we heard it rustling, fast and frantic. Miles burst into the doorway, wild-eyed, breathing hard. Don't open it, he shouted. Evelyn recoiled. What the hell? He grabbed the box from her hands, clutching it to his chest. You don't understand, he gasped. It's not about the money. He's making us choose. Choose what? I asked. Miles's face twisted, somewhere between guilt and terror. Who pays? He dropped the box onto the floor. It hit with a hollow asterisk clunk asterisk. Something inside shifted. Evelyn, defiant as ever, ignored him and opened it. Inside wasn't a clue this time. It was a folded contract official looking, stamped and notarized. Première pique edit up, scanning blood ran cold. It was an asterisk invoice, asterisk asterisk estate, scavenger hunt. Administrative costs, travel expenses, coordination fees at the bottom. The total, $47,320.14, and beneath it our three names. This is a joke, Evelyn said. Miles shook his head. No, it's real. He said whoever finishes the hunt inherits everything, but whoever opens the final box pays for it. The realization hit me like a blow. You mean he tricked us into competing for debt? Miles nodded slowly. That's why I tried to stop you. Evelyn laughed a harsh, cracked sound. So what? The prize is bankruptcy. What kind of man does that? Our father, I said quietly. Miles sank to the floor, head in his hands. He said it was about understanding value. That the only way to appreciate what he built was to lose something. For it, I thought he meant time, effort, maybe pride. But this... Evelyn grabbed the contract from me, her voice sharp. We'll fight it. There's no way this holds up legally, but she stopped mid-sentence. Because written in tiny print, just beneath the signature line, was a clause, asterisk by participating in the hunt. The undersigned agree to the financial and legal responsibilities associated with its completion, as determined by the executor of the estate. Asterisk, her eyes widened. We signed the waiver at the reading. I remembered it then the stack of forms the lawyer made us sign before handing out the first envelopes. I hadn't even read it. None of us had. Miles let out a low laugh. He outplayed us even after he died. The forest seemed to lean closer around us, suffocating. I wanted to burn the damn box, to erase the entire game. But something inside me, some part still hungry for answers, couldn't let go. There has to be another clue, I said. Something that explains why. Evelyn looked at me, her expression unreadable. Why? Because he hated us. That's why. Because this is what happens when you raise kids as props in your performance. She stormed out into the fog. Miles watched her go, then looked back at me. You don't really believe that, do you? Premier hésitated. No, I think he's still trying to tell us something. Miles rubbed his temples. Yeah, well, I think I'm done listening. He kicked the box across the floor and followed Evelyn into the mist, leaving me alone in the collapsing shack with the contract lying open at my feet. The silence was unbearable. I picked up the box, about to toss it, when I noticed something etched faintly into the underside of the lid. Words carved by hand. Asterisk debt is just another word for inheritance. Asterisk, I stared at it for a long time, the meaning circling like vultures in my head. Because maybe he wasn't punishing us. Maybe he was passing something on and we just hadn't figured out what yet. Outside, the fog began. Totin. The reflection of the lake shimmered faintly through the trees, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw him again. My father, standing on the dock, hands behind his back, smiling like he knew exactly where this was going next. I stumbled out of the shack, clutching the box like it. The background, watching. Inotred asked, you're always there. When present, Astros, he swallowed hard. Eyes glass. I opened mine last. Inside, there was no photo, just a folded sheet of paper. I unfolded it with trembling hands. You understood me the least, yet tried the hardest. You thought, no talk no me. But the only thing I ever wanted was for you to see that. Love and debt are the same thing, both are paid in pieces over time. My throat went dry. Evelyn peered over my shoulder, reading silently. That's unsettlingly sentimental for him. Miles exhaled, sinking onto the dock. So what does that mean? We forgive him and pretend this whole nightmare was some lesson in gratitude. No, I said quietly. It means we're still missing something. Because if I knew my father, and God help me, I did, he would never end a story without a final act. The scavenger hunt wasn't over. The invoice, the reflections, the riddles, they were all misdirection, pieces of a single, larger game. I turned the note over. On the back, faint pencil, marks scrawled across the page. It looked like an address. Evelyn, I said, holding it. Up, you still have the SUV keys. She frowned. Yes, but I'm not driving into another one of his deranged riddles. Miles looked up, desperate. If that's the last stop, we have to go. It might be where the real inheritance is. Evelyn hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but if it's another empty house or box full of ghosts. I'm done. The address led us 3 hours south, through winding back roads and long stretches of empty farmland. The tension in the car was suffocating. No one spoke. Each of us was lost in our own version of the past, our own secret debts. When we finally arrived, the GPS announced it like a confession. Destination on your left. It was a cemetery. Crestwood Mortadibenbillet. Well, go out. Slowly, the sun was low, bleeding orange light through the trees. The air was still, heavy with the smell of wet earth and wilted flowers. I led them to the grave. His headstone was simple, almost insultingly so. Gregory Harlow, 1949 to 2025 life is the hunt. Evelyn let out a bitter laugh. Fitting, but I was staring at the ground. Something about the soil looked disturbed, not fresh, but recently turned. I crouched, brushing away leaves. There was a plaque set into the dirt, half buried. Miles helped me pull it free. On the back was a keyhole. Zelest? Key, the one from the very beginning, fit perfectly. We turned it. A metallic click echoed in the silence. Then, beneath the plaque, a small compartment slid open with surprising smoothness. Inside, wrapped in wax paper, was an old reel-to-reel tape. Evelyn blinked. Seriously? He's leaving us mixtapes from the grave now. I didn't answer. My hands were trembling as I lifted it. A la belle. Scrawled across the top. Final clue. Play me where it all began. Miles exhaled slowly. The playhouse. The Crestmore Playhouse, the same place where his will had been read. Where the first clue had been delivered. We drove back in near darkness. No one said a word. The weight of inevitability pressed down on us with every mile. By the time we reached Crestmore, the place was deserted. The marquee still bore the faded lettering from one of his old shows, The Debt of the Living. Inside, dust coated the velvet seats. The air smelled of wood rot and ghosts. I found an old, reel-to-reel projector backstage and threaded the tape through, hands shaking. The machine groaned to life, casting flickering light onto the tattered screen. Then, his voice filled the theater, took calm, controlled, that same patient cruelty he'd always had when teaching us something. If you're hearing this, you've reached the end. You've found the cost, the worth, and the reason. But not the truth. I felt the breath leave my lungs. You were never competing for an inheritance, he continued. You were proving you could carry it. My estate isn't money. Children, it's debt. The businesses, the properties, the taxes, the weight of what I built. Whoever accepts it must also accept its burden. Evelyn whispered, "Oh my God, but there's a choice." His voice went on. Walk away, and it all goes to charity. Stay and you helitha reftree lie. The debt, the lawsuits, the promises. Unpaid. The tape hissed for a moment. Her final decision must be unanimous. You have 1 hour. The projector clicked off. Silence. We sat there in the dim light. Surrounded by his ghosts, the echo of his voice still hanging in the air. Miles spoke first, barely above a whisper. He wants us to decide together. Evelyn's jaw clenched. He wants to see if we'll finally destroy each other. I looked at the blank screen, at the faint reflection of our faces on it. Or if we'll finally stop hunting. The seconds ticked by like a countdown. Somewhere a bucket, 10 went out. And I realized the real inheritance wasn't the debt or the money, it was the choice. The one he'd never been brave enough to make himself. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft, mechanical whir of the projector cooling down. The faint tick-tick-tick of the film reel spinning in the dark. The theater felt like a tomb-hour, Father's final stage. And we were the unwilling actors he'd cast long before his death. Evelyn broke the silence first. So that's it. Either we take on millions in debt or walk away with nothing. Her voice was bitter, but beneath it was something else, fear. Maybe. Hors disbelief. Miles stood up, pacing between the dusty seats. We can't just leave it to charity. That's what? Giving everything. He worked for 2 strangers. He didn't asterisk work for it asterisk. Evelyn snapped. He asterisk performed asterisk for it. You think this empire was built on genius? It was built on leverage and lies. On us. I stayed seated, staring at the blank screen. My reflection was faint in the pale glow. 3 ghostly outlines in a room meant. Fort applause, he said quietly. Heaven, no. He wants to know what kind of people we are when there's no audience left to watch. Miles turned to me. Then what do you want to do? Sam, just leave it all. Walk away. I looked at him at Mibroti, who still had wrestled once in childhood. Always waiting for someone else to make the choice for him. Then I looked at Evelyn, who'd spent her whole life trying to outthink our father, and still couldn't escape the way his shadow shaped her every move. I don't know, I said. But I think the answer isn't just about money. Evelyn gave a dry laugh. It's asterisk, always asterisk about money. No, I said, standing. It's about the fact that he built something broken. And now we have to decide whether to keep it that way or end it. Miles frowned. End it? How? I walked toward the stage, to the spot where he'd once stood during his plays. The boards creaked beneath me. There was a trapdoor at center stage 1 he'd used for dramatic entrances and exits. It was still there, padlocked, dust collecting in the grooves. He always said the stage was where truth lived. I murmured. Evelyn followed me up, uneasy. What are you doing? I crouched and tugged at the lock. It gave after a few hard pulls, snapping loose in my hand. The trapdoor opened with a groan, releasing a draft of cold, stale air. Inside was a small chest. Not ornate this time. Simple. Wooden. Real. Miles joined us, crouching beside me. You think it's another trick? Only one way to find out. The hinges squealed as I lifted the lid. Ainsi doit. Stack of envelopes more, legal papers, by the look of them, and a single handwritten letter sitting on top. The letter was addressed to all three of us. I unfolded it carefully. My father's handwriting wavered across the page, shakier than before. Asterisk to my children, if you've made it here, then you understand at least part of what I tried to teach you. Life is not measured by what you keep, but by what you carry. I carried too much. I built things that own me. And I taught you to measure love in weight and worth, not time or truth. For that, I'm sorry. Asterisk, my throat tightened as I read on. Asterisk, this estate isn't a curse. It's a mirror. You can inherit it, sell it, burn it, or bury it. Whatever it is, make it your, mine rules. End the hunt. Asterisk Evelyn. Covered her mouth with her hand. Miles stared, his face unreadable. I reached into the chest and pulled out the rest of the papers, property deeds, account statements, titles. Everything he owned, right there. At the bottom of the stack was one final envelope, sealed with red wax. It bore no name. Just a single word. Asterisk decide. Asterisk Evelyn exhaled, shakily. He really meant it. All or nothing. Miles leaned back on his heels. What if we take it and fix it? Pay off the can. Make it right? Maybe that's what he wanted. I shook my head. He didn't want redemption. He wanted release. Evelyn frowned. From what? From himself, I said. The theater felt. Smell no? The dust, the silence, the way the faint echo of our voices seemed to linger. In the rafters it was like being inside his mind. A maze of echoes, reflections, and regrets. Miles stood abruptly. I'm taking my share. I don't care about his games. I can make something of it. Evelyn grabbed his arm. There, asterisk, it's alors known. You heard the poulet, ouais? Dan. I'll take it all. You two can pretend you're free, but I'm not leaving empty-handed. He stormed off, disappearing into the lobby. His footsteps faded, followed by the heavy slam of the exit doors. Evelyn turned to me. We can't let him do that. If he signs, he inherits everything, the assets, asterisk, and asterisk the liabilities. It'll ruin him. I met her eyes. Then we stop him. We ran after him, down the aisles, through the crumbling double doors into the night. The air outside was damp and cool. Miles was already halfway across the street, heading toward the lawyer's office next door, the same one from the will reading. The lights were still on. Miles. I shouted. He didn't stop. By the time we reached the office, he was already inside. The lawyer standing behind the desk, startled, but not surprised, as if he'd been waiting. Miles slammed the final envelope down. I'm signing, he said. I'll take it all. Evelyn's voice broke. Miles, don't. But the lawyer nodded solemnly, sliding a single document forward. Once you sign, Mr. Harlow, the estate and all its obligations become yours in full. He didn't hesitate. The pen scratched across the paper. When it was done, the lawyer gathered the forms, eyes heavy with something that might have been pity. It is done, he said quietly. Miles turned toward us, his expression hollow. It's over, but it wasn't, because as we stood there in that sterile office, the clock ticking above. I realized something I hadn't before, something that made my stomach drop. My father's final clause. The one he'd hidden. In every contract, every note, every riddle asterisk the debt, always finds the hunter asterisk. Miles had signed a loan. He wasn't inheriting the debt. He asterisk was asterisk the debt. And as the lawyer handed him the keys to the empire, I saw it. In his eyes, the dawning realization, the horror, the weight of millions in unpaid obligations pressing down on him. Like a physical force, Evelyn covered her mouth. I took a step forward, but Miles just stared past us out the window, toward the darkened playhouse. He wanted one of us to carry it. He whispered, and now I have. Tennis, my small broad looked to him for the first time I understood the meaning of the final hunt. It was never about finding the inheritance. It was about asterisk becoming asterisk it. The street outside the lawyer's office was soaked in the kind of darkness that makes silence feel alive. Neon from a liquor store flickered faintly across the cracked pavement. Miles stood just beyond the glass doors, the rain starting to fall around him. In thin cold threads, he didn't look at us, didn't look at anything, really just stared across the street toward the Cressmore Playhouse, the building that had been both his stage and his mausoleum. Evelyn grabbed my arm. "We have to stop him," she said, her voice trembling. "He doesn't know what he's done, but I knew we couldn't." The papers were signed, the ink was dry, and the weight that came with them, every unpaid loan, every failed investment, every promise our father had leveraged into oblivion, had already started to settle on him. I could see it in his posture, the slow bend of his shoulders, the quiet tilt of his head, like he was physically carrying our father's sins. Miles, I called, stepping out into the rain. "You don't have to do this," he turned, his expression soft but distant. "Yes, Sam, I do." Evelyn followed her, heels clicking against the wet pavement. "We can fight it. We'll find a loophole." Miles gave a tired laugh. "You don't get it, do you? There's no loophole. He made sure of that. He didn't leave me an inheritance. He left me asterisk himself, asterisk the weight, the guilt, the damn performance. I took a slow step forward, then drop it, walk away." He shook his head. "It's already too late." Lightning flashed somewhere in the distance briefly, illuminating the theater's facade. The old marquee still read asterisk, the debt of the living asterisk. For a moment, it almost felt like the building was watching us the way it had during his plays, hungry, expectant. Miles looked at it. "Do you ever think maybe we were part of the show, a long SS off that whole thing? Everything he built was just one long act waiting for the curtain to fall." Evelyn's voice cracked. "Miles, please, let's go home." He smiled faintly, that same half-crooked grin Dad used to wear when he'd rehearsed something for too long. "I am home." Then he turned and walked back toward the theater. Asterisk Miles. Asterisk Evelyn screamed, running after him. By the time we reached the doors, he was already inside. The building's power was out, but there was light flickering, candlelight scattered across the stage. The air smelled of dust and wax and old paper. The chest from beneath the trapdoor sat center stage again. Open, empty. Miles stood in the spotlight, the one bulb still burning overhead, holding something in his hand. A small envelope, the last one, maybe the one he hadn't opened. "What's that?" I asked, my voice echoing across the hollow theater. He didn't answer. He tore it open and pulled out a single slip of paper. Then he read it aloud. Asterisk, every performance ends the same way. The audience leaves, the lights go out, and only the debt remains. Asterisk, he let the paper fall. It fluttered down like ash. "Miles," I said carefully, stepping closer, "you don't owe him this." He looked up at me, then eyes glistening in the candlelight. "That's where you're wrong." He made sure I did. Before I could reach him, he pulled something else from his jacket, a small brass key. The one from the fountain, from the first clue. He turned it over in his hand like it was the last prop in a Trezhemy. "So I'll leave him what's left." And before either of us could move, he dropped the key into the chest, reached for one of the candles, and tipped. It overflamed, caught immediately. The stage erupted in light, swallowing the wood, the curtains, the letters of our name still carved into the old floorboards. Evelyn screamed, lunging forward, but I held her back. The fire was too fast to alive. Miles stood in the middle of it, his silhouette framed by burning velvet. "Tell him," he shouted through the smoke voice breaking, "tell him the debt's paid." The roof began to groan above us. The flames climbed higher, crackling like applause. We stumbled out into the rain, coughing, gasping, the heat licking at our backs. From the street, the playhouse looked almost beautiful, the final curtain call of a man who'd never known how to stop performing. Fire trucks came, sirens wailed, people gathered. But by the time they got inside, Miles was gone. No body, no trace. Just the melted remains of that chest and the faint, twisted shape of a brass key among the ashes. Evelyn and I stood in silence, drenched and shivering, watching the building collapse into itself. The theater that had begun his empire and ended his legacy turned to cinders before our eyes. She didn't cry. Neither did I after a while. She said softly, "You think he knew it would end like this?" I looked at the burning ruins, the smoke curling into the night sky like a final monologue. He always knew how to write.